The terms that are important for us: neuro, skull, head, and brain being neuro, cranial, cephalo, and cerebro. Cerebrum is the medical term for brain. And the brain does these things for us and controls everything, or the three parts: the brain, the spinal cord, and the peripheral nerves. Remember, those were the brain, the spinal cord, and then the peripheral nerves are those that come off to the side, going down our arms and legs, into our chest, into all of our internal organs, and so on. So the brain, the spinal cord, and your peripheral nerves. And the purpose of this system is to control everything we do. We talked about the lobes of the brain, these four, and a sample test question is, which of the following is not one of the lobes of the brain? Or all of the following are lobes of the brain except. So look for something in that context. I'm not asking you to list them, but pick out what doesn't belong there. Okay? In that sense, knowing the lobes of the brain: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. And for a quick review, if you're looking that way from the top of the head: frontal, parietals, temporals on each side, and occipital at the back. Frontal, parietals, temporals, and occipitals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lobes. We talked about the gray matter and white matter of the brain. The gray matter, the exterior, where we house memory cells. The tails of those cells stick down into the white matter, forming nerve tracts, which we'll be looking at a little bit closer today. So that's where we get the difference in color. The gray matter houses the cell body. The white matter houses the tails, or what are called axons, and we'll be looking at that today. We said that the brain is separated into two hemispheres, left and right, and that right brain is associated with creativity, and left brain is associated with logical thinking. We talked about these cells right here inside the ventricles, and they produce cerebrospinal fluid. We had 4 ventricles, the lateral ventricles up beside each other, 1 and 2, and this is you looking as if it's been cut off in the front and you're looking into the front. 1 and 2, if they were sideways, they'd be 1 with number 2 right next to it, 1 and 2. Below them is the third ventricle, kind of dips down a little bit like that. It would be right here. And the fourth ventricle is further down the brain stem. So this is a side view. This is a front looking straight on. And the ventricles are lined with a type of cell called the ependymal cell. And its job is to produce cerebrospinal fluid. And that is the fluid that the brain floats in. So there are 2 questions right there. Name the cell that produces cerebrospinal fluid. Name the fluid that the brain floats in or is surrounded by, the cerebrospinal fluid. We talked about the diencephalon and those 2 parts. The thalamus was the first part, serves as the relay center. We brought up the picture of the switchboard, where information coming into the brain, it goes into the thalamus first, or into its area first, like vision goes to the back, but then the thalamus relays it to our frontal lobe for us. So the thalamus serves as a relay center. Which part of the brain serves as a relay center? A, B, C, D. Pick the right one, the thalamus. The second part of the diencephalon was the hypothalamus, which is our main temperature regulator. It also regulates sensation of hunger and thirst and has a role in maintaining heart rate and respiratory rate. Then we kind of got away from the test questions for a little bit, when we talked about the pineal gland. We'll be discussing it again when we do the hormones. We talked about the HO cells being the hypocretins and orexins and keeping you awake and keeping you asleep. We discussed the hippocampus creating memory cells for us. And this is where we are today. We are moving down from the brain and moving into the brain stem. Do I want to do that yet? I'm going to change the order here, maybe. Yeah, let's change the order a little bit of these. Put that one up there. And let's go to the cerebellum next. Let me pull up the textbook, and so you can refer to these in the book. See here. And we are way up in page. Went too far. This won't take me all the way there, but it'll get us close. Page 461. Let's do this. Let's do 481. 449. Damn it. 600. 568. Oh, man. We should be close now. Oh, way too far. Jeez. Now y'all see how much of a pain it is scrolling through all these doggone pages to write down the homework pages. I have to go through the entire book page by page because for some reason it won't let you jump to a page. It always takes you to the wrong place. Really? Nah, I'm past it. It's better to just scroll through. Okay. A computer is supposed to make everything easier for you. If I had a paper book in front of me, I'd have been to the page. Okay, all that just to get here. All right, so anyway, we were ready to discuss this part of the brain. And also writing on here is a big pain in the butt, right here. It's located at the very back and actually below the brain itself. And the word is pronounced. What page is that, by the way? Shit. Page 463. And that part back there, and the word is pronounced the cerebellum. Not to be confused with cerebrum. Remember, that's the brain. The cerebellum is your mini brain. Again, it's pronounced cerebellum, the mini brain. And it's responsible for your balance and coordination. So it gets information coming from sensors inside your ears. That information is transmitted to the cerebellum. And the cerebellum actually activates muscles in the body to keep you steady. So if the information coming in is incorrect, or if the cerebellum isn't processing the information correctly, you're going to be off balance. You're going to be dizzy and have difficulty standing up. So, has anybody ever had a inner ear infection where
Yes.
when you stood up, it made you really dizzy, like, whoa, dude? That's the information from your ears is being interfered with because you have that ear infection, and the cerebellum isn't getting appropriate information, and as a result, oh, ooh, ooh. When I had the ear infection, man, I woke up, stood up from the bed, it's like, whoa, dude, fell back on the bed. And I was like, man, maybe I just stood up too fast. I take all these meds and crap. Maybe I just stood up too fast. So I just sat there for a minute, tried to stand up again. Whoa, okay, I've got a freaking ear infection. So the cerebellum maintains your balance and coordination for you. Now, this is where I also want to talk a little bit about blows to the back of the head. You tend to see on TV and movies, this kind of stuff, people just kind of flippantly hitting people in the back of the head with shit. Beer bottles, butts of a gun, things like that. And that's not supposed to do a whole lot of damage to somebody. Did anybody ever see a TV show? Y'all probably never seen this TV. It's an old TV show called The A-Team. Had an actor in there named Mr. T. That was his name, Mr. T. And he used to wear the gold chains around his neck and the gold, da 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 da. But anyway, they were a group of mercenary guys who go out and they solve, problems for people. But anyway, the A-Team. So they travel all around, and whenever they had to take an airplane, the Mr. T character was afraid to fly. So they would have to knock him out in order to get him on the airplane. And then he'd wake up on the airplane and go, man, you did it to me again. Da, da, da. But anyway, they were always hitting him in the back of the head to knock him out. Okay. Now, yeah, they might work today. You hit somebody in the back of the head, they wake up, well, you did it to me again. You hit the same person in the back of the head the same way tomorrow, and they're going to wake up like, they can't hold their balance. They don't recognize their own reflection in the mirror. They can't lift their arms higher than this. Okay. They don't know who their mama is. This kind of stuff. Okay. So hitting people in the back of the head is no freaking joke, y'all. It's not something you just do flippantly, come along smacking people in their damn head like that. Especially in the back of the head where we process vision and our balance and coordination. One of my clients, a young lady, she was 16 years old. This was an occupational therapy. She was 16 years old, and she had a full ride scholarship to the Air Force Academy. She was still in high school because her parents wouldn't let her graduate early. They wanted her to stay with her age range. So, but she already was accepted to the Air Force Academy on an academic scholarship. This young lady was brilliant. And she was at a party with friends, little house party. Fight broke out. They're trying to get out the door, and boom, she got hit in the back of the head with a beer bottle. Now she's coming to therapy with me. And the first thing I do is I give her a 3-ring binder, a little school binder. And I put in there pictures of her mother, her sister, her doctor, me, her therapist, her teacher, so that she could recognize us when she saw us. Yeah, her mama. So if her mother walks up to her, she can't search memories for that. And she has to go into the book where it says, this person is your mother. Oh, you're my mother. And that's from a blow to the back of the head with a beer bottle. So just understand that hitting people in the head is no joke, man, especially at the back of the head where the cerebellum is. They could come out of that with, that's another client. Now, y'all don't think this is weird, but this is another client of mine. He didn't get a blow to the head. He had a brain tumor near the cerebellum, and his center line was affected, which means that he always stood at an angle. And for him, this felt absolutely straight up and down, and was wondering why he was always falling over. One of my effects of my tumor is that I fall down. Well, yeah, look at how you're standing, huh? You're not straight up and down. Uh-huh. Now, we had to draw a line down the center of the mirror, straight up and down, and have him center his body on that. And when he did, it felt like he was leaning to the right. So when he was perfectly centered, he's doing this. I feel like I'm about to fall over, but he was straight up and down. When you tell him, okay, stand up straight. Okay, now I feel straight. But he kept falling over because he wasn't straight. He didn't feel it, but he still kept falling over. So that happened from a tumor that happened near his cerebellum back there. And as a result, his ability to stand up straight was affected. His center line was shifted. Yeah. So these are things that happen there at the back of the brain, especially if we're talking about tumors back there or somebody hitting you in the head with something. I'm surprised that I didn't affect my cerebellum when I cracked my skull back there. I had a little bruising back on this part of the brain, just a little bit. It didn't affect my vision at that time, but you see, I do wear glasses now. That may just be getting old, or it might be both. And I went over to get glasses, y'all, and they was like, well, because my wife caught me using her glasses one day. I was trying to read a pill bottle, and come on, y'all know how small those pill bottle writing is on those things. So I picked up her glasses and was using them. And I've always made fun of my wife for wearing glasses, you know, I can't see nothing, yada, yada. So she came in and she caught me using her glasses. Oh, forward, I'm taking you over, get you some glasses, da, da, da. So we went over to the place, man, and first of all, they give you this half sheet of paper, or this piece of paper that's like half a sheet with instructions on there. And the first thing I did was look at the lady and say, this is the eye clinic, right? Look how small the writing is on this thing. How many, this little questionnaire you're supposed to read and answer questions. How the hell is somebody supposed to read this in the damn eye clinic? Y'all should have this shit like painted up on the wall, man, where everybody can freaking see it. So my wife had to fill that out for me. I went in, did my appointment, and come out like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Give me that $69 pair of glasses that y'all advertise on TV. And oh, no. You need a special prescription because you have two prescriptions. I can't see anything. I wear glasses for normal view, glasses for up close. So anyway, that could be the blow to the back of the head that I, suffered, or it could be just that I'm getting old. All right, so the cerebellum is responsible for our balance and coordination. Sample test question, name the part of the brain that's responsible for balance and coordination. And pick it out of a list, A, B, C, D. So that's your cerebellum. I was at the back of the brain, also called the mini brain or small brain. Okay, so now we're ready for the brain stem. And you see the three parts listed right here. The brain is the part we've been talking about with the cerebellum at the back. Now the brain stem, what color I want to use? Let's use that one. The brain stem is this structure right here. All the way up from here. There's your brain stem with three separate parts, separated like this. The upper part up here is your midbrain. The middle part is the pons, and the lower part is the medulla oblongata. People just like saying that. That's why y'all probably have heard of that word, that phrase before, medulla oblongata. They like to mention it because it just sounds, I guess it's just fun to say. So those are the three parts of the brain stem, the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. Now, people do like our words. There's an old movie that I saw where people were in a spaceship And this was like the 1950s, and they're trying to portray the future. So they've got these people in a spaceship, and they're supposed to be using space type terms, you know, dot, dot, dot. And in the spaceship, they said something, and the guy goes, quick, increase cerebrovascular pressure, because it just sounded so spacey, but there were medical terms they were using. So it's kind of fun to watch that, like really, you know, cerebrovascular pressure, or no, they said increased neurovascular pressure, and dot, dot, dot. So they're just using medical terms because they sounded so spacey to people. And that's probably why you've heard the term medulla oblongata before. I guess it's just fun to say. So the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. Now, a lot actually happens in your spinal or in your brain stem, more than people give credit for. It's not just the connection of the brain to the spinal cord. A lot of processing happens up here in the in the brain stem. Starting with the midbrain, which maintains consciousness for you. What am I doing? Oh. By maintaining consciousness, what we mean is that it is stimulated by the HO cells, and it keeps you conscious and alert. First of all, y'all should know that there is a difference between being asleep and being unconscious. Unconscious is an unnatural state for us. We sleep, you know, every evening or whatever. And by the way, nobody really knows why animals sleep. It's not to recharge like people think. Oh, you go to sleep to recharge. Really? Where do we get energy from? Glucose plus oxygen. So if you start to get tired, you should be able to eat a piece of candy and boom, I'm up for another hour or two. But it doesn't work that way. I don't care if you're really tired. I don't care how much you eat. You're still going to fall asleep. So we don't know what sleep is. It's not recharging because you get energy from glucose. So what is sleep? And we don't know why animals sleep. But anyway, there is a difference between being asleep and being unconscious. If anybody remembers the scenario with Michael Jackson, surrounding Michael Jackson's death, his doctor was giving him anesthesia at night. Now, how, and every other doctor in the world says, how stupid is that? Because when you're unconscious, you don't get that recharge that we get when we sleep. So has anybody ever had a surgery where they put you out? You were totally unconscious while they did surgery on you?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, when they brought you back, you were tired, weren't you?
Yes.
You were sleepy.
Right.
Why were you sleepy? Because while you were unconscious, you weren't sleeping. The body wasn't recharging the way it does when we sleep. So being unconscious and being asleep are not the same thing. And what was happening with Michael Jackson is that he died from exhaustion. He was not sleeping at night. He was lying immobile for 8 hours, but he wasn't asleep. So being unconscious and being asleep are two different things. So this part maintains consciousness in us, control over our limbs, our extremities. When you're unconscious, you don't have that control. And one of the things that some people are afraid of is what they call, anesthesia awareness, where somebody is under the effect of anesthesia, which renders you unconscious. But you are totally aware the entire time that you're out. In other words, you can still feel. But you can't tell anybody because you can't control anything. So that's one of my fears, man, that I'll go into surgery or something and be anesthesia aware, and that they are cutting you and you're feeling every cut. It hurts, but you can't do anything about it. There's a movie called Awake, and it's about somebody who is under anesthesia aware while they're doing surgery on them. So being conscious and asleep are not the same thing. The person was unconscious, but they were not asleep. They were totally aware the entire time. So the midbrain maintains consciousness in us, our ability to control everything, to react to our environment, to see, to speak, to hear, to smell, to touch, and so on. It also coordinates our reflexes for us. For example, something moves towards your face and you move back. Those are your reflexes. And we get that through our midbrain. The midbrain also is responsible for what some people think should be considered one of our senses. There's already an argument out there for the sixth sense. We know we have five senses: smell, sight, taste, hearing, and touch. But the sixth sense, people tend to want to add balance as a sixth sense. Then in that case, proprioception would be your seventh sense. Right? So what is proprioception? This is going to sound kind of dumb to you. Proprioception is knowing where your arms and legs are, knowing where your extremities are. Now that sounds kind of dumb, but have you ever seen, or I'm sure you've seen, a dog walking or a horse walking or any four-legged animal walking across the room? Now, what you may not have paid attention to is that if your dog or any other four-legged animal is walking across the room, if they come to an obstacle, they step over that obstacle with their front legs. But as they continue, they don't look backwards, but they step over the same obstacle with their back legs without looking back there. How do they do that? And know exactly when to lift that back leg and the other back leg to step over the thing that the front legs just went over without looking back there to make sure they don't kick it or step on it. They do that with proprioception. Probably the best example of that is a snow leopard walking in snow. You'll notice, if you ever get a chance to see that as the leopard walks through the snow, the front legs push down the snow and make the imprint in the snow. But if you keep watching, you'll notice that the back leg goes right into that same imprint of the front leg. So they don't make a new imprint. They put the back leg right down where the front leg was. That's proprioception, knowing where your extremities are and being able to control them like that. In humans, the best example of proprioception is running up the steps without looking down at your feet. Matter of fact, most of us, if we tried to run up the steps and look down at our feet at the same time, most of us would trip. Knowing exactly how high to raise your foot to the next landing. And how many of y'all haven't got ones where you didn't get it right and you tripped on a damn step running up the steps? Okay. That's when I fell and hit my damn head on the concrete steps. Boom. I didn't get it right. I was a kid then. As we get older, we start to refine this kind of stuff. And yes, you can walk up a flight of stairs without looking at your feet. It's proprioception. Another example of proprioception is being able to identify objects with your fingertips, as long as you've seen that object before. So if you take, for example, a key, a quarter, and a nickel, and put it into your pocket, could you reach into your pocket and pull out the nickel without seeing it? It's proprioception. And again, brain tumors and that type of thing can cause a person to lose proprioception. Many of them will end up in a wheelchair because they just can't sense how high to lift their foot when walking. You got that down as a baby. You didn't at first, but eventually you got the sense of proprioception. How high to lift my foot to take a step forward? How high to lift my foot to run or to go up steps? It took you a while as a kid to learn that kind of stuff. And that's why kids often trip over their own damn feet. They are learning proprioception. By the time you get it perfected, or by the time you're an adult, you should have that perfected. So a tumor in that part of the brain can cause people to lose the ability to walk. Not because the muscles won't work, but because they can't sense how to move their feet and how high and how far and so on to walk. Okay, another example of loss of proprioception is that you can't discern shapes with your fingertips. And I had one of these clients, and what I did for therapy with this guy was I took a cardboard box and I cut a hole in the side, and I put all types of objects inside the box: a key, a quarter, a nickel, a plastic spider, just anything that I could think of to throw in there. I kept a list of what was in there, and therapy was for him to reach into the box without looking and find the thing that I was asking him to take out. For example, I'd say, okay, I want you to reach in and I want you to take out the key. And he should be able to reach in there, feel the different objects, and feel which one of them is actually a key. But he would come out with the cigarette lighter and look at it and go, oh man, that's not it. I mean, he knows what it looks like. He just can't transmit that to his brain. So he'd come out with the cigarette lighter, look at it like, oh man, go back in, and eventually what it came to was that eventually he would luck up on the thing that we were looking for. But he never developed the ability to actually figure out what it was based on his touch. So that's proprioception, the ability to know where our extremities are and how and controlling them without having to look at them. All right. The midbrain also has an area in there called the substantia nigra. Now, remember, we are talking about this part of the brain right there still, the midbrain. And the text for that is way the hell 3 or 4 pages away. Oh, that's why I have them in that order, because the textbook has them in that order. And there it has the midbrain and then the cerebellum. All right, so anyway, that's why I had them in that order. But anyway, there is your midbrain and the area known as the substantia nigra. Okay, the substantia nigra, what does it do? All right. It produces a hormone a neurotransmitter for us called dopamine. I'll write the word now, but we will discuss it here in a little bit. Neurotransmitter. Based on its name, it's a nerve, or it is a conductor between neurons. Neurotransmitter. And we'll explain all that here in a little bit. So dopamine is a neurotransmitter. Now, the first thing I'm going to mention about dopamine is that dopamine is a very strong and effective mood stabilizer. Okay. This is the stuff that makes you feel okay. So those people who are bipolar, who are, depressed, manic, they're not stable. Their issue may be with dopamine. They're not getting enough or too much of it. All right. So it's a mood stabilizer for us. Now, contrary to popular belief, when you do drugs, it's not the drug that gets you that euphoria, that sense that everything's cool with me. you know, the lack of coordination, the da da da, all those other things that go along with the drug, the sleepiness and so on. That's the drug itself. But the part that makes you feel good is like, man, you know, it's like you smoke a good joint and somebody could kill your dog and you say, oh, I'll get another one tomorrow. You know, everything's just cool with me. Okay? That comes from the dopamine. See, drugs cause your brain to release more dopamine. And that's where you get the euphoria, that everything's cool with me. And that's why we call doing that stuff dope. Remember Ice-T in New Jack City? Man, you must be doing the dope. All right. Yeah, that's why we call it dope. Hence the term dopamine. So it's the dopamine that causes the body to gives you that sensation of everything being cool with you. Now, here's the issue here is that when you do drugs like pot, cocaine, heroin, they cause the body to release more dopamine. And as you release high levels of dopamine in your body, eventually the dopamine produces in the substantia nigra, they become burned out. Now, you stop doing these drugs after 15 years on cocaine. You finally stop. You kick. All right. Now, naturally, you're not producing too much, but you're not producing enough either. Your brain doesn't produce as much dopamine anymore. And as a result, you never get that sensation of everything's just cool with me. I mean, you're not depressed. You're not manic. You're not craving the drug anymore. You've kicked. But you just don't feel good about things anymore. You don't feel bad, but you don't feel good either. Now, everybody else, you know, on a Saturday morning, 80 degrees outside, sun shining, most people can go outside and go, man, it's a nice day today. For you, it's just a day. Nothing good about it, nothing bad about it. And what do these folks want? They just want to feel good about something. So what do they end up doing? Relapsing to the drug. If you ever watch that TV shows that come on, those intervention shows, okay, remember they're just like the first 48 or every other reality show out there. You're not going to see the ones that don't work. Like you're not going to see the first 48 episode where the cop makes a mistake. They're not going to air that one. You're not going to see the intervention shows where the people relapse to the drug. They're not going to show those. When the truth is that when we talk, especially the more addictive drugs, cocaine, heroin, meth, the relapse rate is something like 96%. So if you have been on any of those drugs and you have gotten off the drugs, you're a strong person. More power to you, man. You're the 4%, because 94, 96% of those people are going to relapse. And part of that is just, I just want to feel good about something. Their brain isn't releasing dopamine anymore, not at the levels that they need it to. Now, dopamine is also a movement stabilizer. You see, when I want to pick something up, I reach over, I pick it up, nice steady movement. My hands don't shake. I know exactly how hard to squeeze it without crushing it or breaking it, and enough so that I'm not constantly dropping it. All of that is stabilizing that movement. And it also keeps my damn arm from moving when I don't want it to. I can sit here and talk to y'all without My arm movement. Dopamine has a big role in that. I know it sounds stupid to you, but dopamine helps me to stabilize my arm when I'm sitting here so it doesn't move without me telling it to. Hence the condition Parkinson's disease. Now, y'all may have seen a video of somebody with Parkinson's disease where they were tremoring, shaking, like Muhammad Ali. And you go, oh man, Parkinson causes you to shake. No, it doesn't. What you're seeing is the medication. When you don't have enough dopamine, you can take a medication called levodopa or L-dopa, the synthetic dopamine. And that's the tremors. So when you see somebody and you see them Parkinson, they're just shaking like that, they're on the medication. Parkinson's is a little more involved than just tremors. And that's a mistake my mom makes. She's older now and her hand shakes. And she said, I think it's Parkinson's. No, Mom, that's not Parkinson's disease. Okay. Let me show you Parkinson's disease. I want to do the Michael J. Fox, Oprah, O-P-R-A, Oprah interview. And I think this is the one I want. Then and now. Okay.
Well, the thing about it is that, for me, this movie was a reaction to, I find that there's so many people that take what I do far more seriously than I do, or I am able to. In other words, the people who analyze films and actors and stuff, and they would ask me questions about why would you do a serious film? You want to be Olivia? And I'd be relaxed. And they gave me plane tickets. They flew me there. I did it. It was fun. So this was a chance for me to make fun of being an actor who wants to be taken seriously and make fun of an actor's process and all of that. And with Jimmy, it was a natural because for him, he's the world's most intense man as far as everybody's concerned. So it was a chance for him to play a guy who's so intense he would run someone over to go to a date.
You wondered, were we just going to be Michael with Parkinson's?
Right.
Yes. And what is the answer?
No, I think I'm on other stuff too.
Yeah.
I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a activist. I'm a writer. I'm just a student of the world. I mean, I'm just out there. This is one fact of my life, but it's not the totality of my life. It doesn't define me. And I'm blessed. You just gotta look at what you have and be grateful for what you have. And if you can do that, then you get on to the business of life. And life is
I like that you. I like that. Yeah. I like that you called the book "Always Looking Up" and why you did that, because
it's kind of a short joke.
Short joke. Yeah.
How'd you say this? But my world growing up was mostly asses and elbows. And in the same way too, the second part, the Adventures of an Incurable Optimist, is also a pun on being incurable.
Incurable.
I remember when I first was diagnosed, and
Okay. Now you see, he can't stop those movements, that constant moving and shifting, and he can't stop that. And if he was standing, the movement would continue. So imagine trying to walk and you are in just constant motion like that. Okay. The levodopa minimizes the movement and turns him into tremors. But he can't stop those movements. That's Parkinson's disease. And they start as soon as he wakes up in the morning. So while he's asleep, he lies still. But when he wakes up, as soon as he wakes up, the movements start. Okay. One guy when Michael J. Fox was testifying at the stem cell or the Senate hearings on stem cell research back in the 90s or late 90s, along with Christopher Reeve and several other famous people speaking in favor of stem cell research in the United States. They shot it down, by the way, and it's almost impossible to do stem cell research in the United States today. So, when it was his turn to speak, if you've ever seen it, it's like the podium in front, and then all of the senators just up there on the little panel. He stepped up, he opened his paper, set it on the podium, and he started talking. About 30 seconds into his presentation, one of the senators leaned forward and interrupted him and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Fox, excuse me." And he said, "I don't know about my other senators, my fellow senators here, but I, for one, find this to be a very serious subject that we're discussing, and I would appreciate it if you would give it the respect that it's due. Thank you." And sat back. What was he talking about? Michael J. Fox was at the podium with hands on each side in constant motion. And this dude thought he was being silly. The man didn't even know what Parkinson's disease was. Too many of us see it like this. But he was standing at the podium, hands on each side, and he was in motion just like he was there. And the guy thought he was just, being silly or whatever, and told him to give it the respect that it's due. And this is the person who's supposed to be making the decision about something based on this disease and didn't even know what the hell it was. So anyway, too many people don't know what Parkinson's disease is. Okay. Now, it's not just the constant motions. It's also something called dystonia. Bad tone. Their hands and toes cramp up all the time. Okay. I mean, to the point where they're painful. So we have to give them medications to decrease muscle tone in them. And those medications actually enhance the movements. If you have less muscle tone, then the muscles will move even more. But we're trying to keep them from just cramping up. So they have the dystonia associated with it as well, the severe muscle cramps of the hands and feet, fingers and toes. They also tend to have what we call the Parkinson's gait. GAIT. That refers to how a person mobilizes or walks. Okay? When you say a person has an abnormal gait, it means that they're walking in a strange way or an unusual way. In Parkinson's gait, the people take what we call baby steps. We still call them that, baby steps. And in the classroom, I would demonstrate this, but imagine somebody taking little bitty steps and their body weight is pulling them forward faster than their feet can carry them. And they start like little, and then the steps come faster and faster and faster. And eventually they have to catch themselves onto something or they'll fall down. So it's tiny steps that speed up. And they're going at a pace that's too fast for them to be comfortable with, and they start to lose their balance. That's a Parkinson's gait. They go tiny steps, but then those steps speed up, and eventually they have to catch themselves on something. They also turn on point. When you or I are standing and I want to go to the left, I just move my foot to the left and start walking that way. If I'm walking straight, I just turn and walk in that direction. These folks will walk up to a point and then turn their feet until their body is facing that way and then walk in that direction. So walk up to a point, turn steps in spot, turning their body around, and then eventually step off in that direction. So they turn on point rather than curving. They come up to that point, turn, and go that way. They also they are very slow to adjust to balance. Their reflexes are going to be affected. So they have very slow reflexes. And how we test that is, believe it or not, the doctor's going to push them down. It's called the push test. They'll have you stand behind the patient, and the doctor will stand in front of the patient, put their hand on the patient's shoulders, and push them. And you're back there to catch them. Most of us, if somebody did that, the first thing you would do is put a foot back and keep yourself from falling backwards. Their reflexes are so slow that if you push them, they'll just fall back like a tree. And you're back there to catch them, to keep them from falling over. That's the push test, because of it tests their slowed reactions. So all of that comes along with Parkinson's disease. It's not just what people think of as tremors. All right. And here is, boom, test item. Parkinson's is the degeneration of neurons leading to tremors, weakness, and slow movements. Parkinson's disease.
So when you have Parkinson's, do they have a lot of seizures as well?
Seizures can be associated with Parkinson's, but not all the time. I would probably say that you have a person who's having seizures who develops Parkinson's. You feel me? Just because two things happen together doesn't mean that one is necessarily associated with the other. So seizures are not common with Parkinson's disease, but can they happen? Yes, because people who are prone to seizures can also develop Parkinson's disease.
See, yeah, I had got like after having a child, they gave me like depressant medication, and I started having seizures, and now I continue to have them. After they found out what it was for like almost a year and a half or more, I was having seizures like almost every single day, and nobody knew it. And of course, I didn't know it. And then finally, somebody actually physically saw me have one, and then they figured, oh crap, she's having seizures. And so they were like, oh, I did notice the medication I gave you for depression, it says it does cause seizures. I guess we better take you off now.
Oh,
I
really?
have no history of it. Yeah. And now I have them like, yeah, it can just happen at any time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, asshole. You know, there are like seizure dogs. Have you ever heard of those?
No.
Dogs
No.
that can detect seizures in people.
That's crazy. I need one of them.
And they really can't do anything about it, but they can let you know you're getting ready to have a seizure. So you can go lay down, move stuff out the way, lay down, and prepare yourself. And what they would typically do is, if you're sitting down, the dog will come over and lay their head on your lap. Or if you're standing up, the dog will come over and lean against your leg. Either way, they're going to lean on you and let you know that you're about to have a seizure. Those are seizure dogs. They're pretty cool, man. And you also get to take them everywhere. You know, with the little, legally take them everywhere, you know, with the little support dog or service dog collars and all that kind of stuff. So they're pretty cool.
Like big, like the CNI dog type stuff?
No, I think they have to be trained, and I think they can train almost any dog. But, you know, you wouldn't like buy a dog and take them over to be trained. It takes like years for them to do it. So they like train up a bunch, and then you go out and pick out one that you bond with or whatever. So you might look into that. I don't know what their criteria is for, adopting one, but look into it. They are out there. So that is Parkinson's, and I'm going to use this term right here, autoimmune. This is where your immune cells are attacking your own tissues because they don't recognize them anymore. All of our tissues, or every cell in the body, has a marker on it called a self antigen. It's an ID badge that says that this cell belongs to this body. It's not a bacteria. It's not a virus. It's supposed to be here. So it's like wearing your ID badge to work, saying, I'm supposed to be here. That's the ID badge that says these cells belong to us. And that's why we can't necessarily take tissue from another person and from one person and put it in another person. The ID badge won't match. It's like somebody from Walmart walking into Kmart with a Walmart badge on, saying, hey, I belong here. And even though you are a worker, no, you don't belong in this store. That's a Walmart badge. No, you don't belong in this body. Even though you're a liver cell, you don't belong in this body. That's the wrong badge. So it's why we can't move tissue from one person to another just flippantly. We got to match the badges as much as possible. Yeah. So every cell has this. If this thing becomes damaged and your immune cell no longer recognizes it, that's like having an ID badge that security people can't read, and they attack and destroy your own tissues. That's autoimmune. Auto meaning self-immunity. Okay. So you are attacking your own tissues. So that's an autoimmune disorder. And Parkinson's disease is autoimmune. Why are their dopamine producers being destroyed? Their own immune system is doing that to them. Other examples of autoimmune disorders are rheumatoid arthritis, the skin disorder, oh shoot, why can't I think of the name of it? The scaly patches on the skin, psoriasis. Lupus, multiple sclerosis are all examples of autoimmune disorders. It's their immune system doing it to them. And Parkinson's disease is another example. So yesterday in Jeopardy, believe it or not, the category was autoimmune diseases. And buddy, I bang, 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 bang. What? Ha! And, you know, my wife gets all mad at me because I dance around and act silly when I get Jeopardy questions right. But they had a whole category of autoimmune diseases, and Parkinson's disease was in the list. An autoimmune disorder that destroys the dopamine producers of the substantia nigra. Ah, Parkinson's. Hey. All right. So anyway, that's what an autoimmune disorder is. And the only way to treat autoimmune is to suppress your immune system, turn the immune system off. And that's why they're really fighting an uphill battle with cures for Parkinson's disease. Because we have to figure out a way to keep whatever happened to their cells to make them unidentifiable to the immune system. We'll have to keep a way to keep that from happening, or find a way to keep that from happening. So that is Parkinson's disease, degeneration of neurons leading to tremors, weakness, and slow movements. Parkinson's disease. All right, so let's go ahead and take a first break. It's 9:15. Come back at 9:30. All right, so we're back. Okay, so that's what Parkinson's disease is. Degeneration of neurons leading to tremors, weakness, and slow movement. So that's our midbrain, maintaining consciousness, coordinating our reflexes, and responsible for proprioception. It also has that area of the substantia nigra that produces dopamine, and then what dopamine does for us. The next part of the brainstem is called the pons, and that's the part that is bubbled out in the front right there. Makes it look almost like it's pregnant, a pregnant seahorse. Y'all see the seahorse right here? This part of the brain is sometimes referred to as the seahorse. Y'all see how that kind of looks like a seahorse? And the pons makes it look like the seahorse is pregnant. So nothing happening in the pons except millions upon millions of connections. So the pons actually connects this part to that part with all those connections in there. And as far as the text is concerned, right down here, the pons relays nerve impulses from the spinal cord to the midbrain. So it's just a connection in there. Now that is where they're going to do the head transplant. They're going to cut at the pons and take the new head and connect it to the lower half of the pons of the body that they're attaching it to. Now, there are so many connections in here that no person can stand there and make all of these connections. There are some, major and then lesser connections. And what they're going to try to do is go in and connect all the major connections and then put stem cells and hope that the minor connections all just kind of stem cell themselves together. Will it work? They don't know. Probably not. But the first heart transplant probably didn't work either. Yeah. So they're estimating that it's like a 96% chance this thing will fail. But again, the next one, they might get that percentage down to 80%. And eventually, head transplants may be as common as heart transplants. Wouldn't that be kind of weird? I wonder if it'd be cool if you could pick out the body, right? Yeah, hey, I want that body right there, man. The buff, yeah, I want that one right there. But anyway, so they're going to cut it off and see if they can make that attachment. And that's at the pons because the pons does no processing of information or anything. It simply carries information from this part up to that part or vice versa. So just a bunch of connections in there. The lower part, the medulla, down there. The whole word is medulla oblongata. We simply refer to it as the medulla. That part of the brain, back down to the text, is contains the respiratory centers that automatically set respiratory rate and other centers that control our heart rate. So what they have is they have chemoreceptors in that spot. Chemoreceptors detect the chemical makeup of our blood. And as the blood flows through the midbrain or into service that part, it detects the chemicals in there. And if your oxygen level is low, it increases the respiratory rate and also affecting the heart rate. Whenever your respiratory rate goes up, heart rate's going to go up with it. So the chemoreceptors detect the amount of oxygen in your blood, and if it's low, it increases heart rate and respiratory rate to bring up the oxygen level in your blood. That's what chemoreceptors do, detecting amount of chemicals in the blood. And they're located in the medulla oblongata. Okay, so that's how somebody can continue to breathe and continue to have a heart rate, but be brain dead. Because those are controlled by the medulla, not the brain itself. You may have heard of people before that are brain dead. They take them off the respirators, they continue to breathe. It's like, oh, okay. So every time you've heard of them pulling the plug on people. Every time they pull the plug, doesn't mean the person's going to die. They may pull the plug on somebody and it takes 2 weeks before they actually respiratory rate and heart rate stops. Okay. So the other thing that happens in the medulla is where the nerve tracks cross, where the right brain controls the left side of the body, the left brain controls the right side of the body. That crossing happens in the medulla oblongata. And that's your brain stem. Okay. The midbrain, the pons, and the medulla. Questions about the Parkinson's disease? Questions about the cerebellum? And the medulla oblongata, heart rate and respiratory rate, and the nerve tracks cross in there. Okay, and that then brings us to we've done the brain, the midbrain, the brain stem, and the brain stem connects to your spinal cord, which then travels all the way down to the level of your belly button. So that's what we're going to talk about next, is your spinal cord. The spinal cord carries information in both directions, in and out of the brain, through 2 different nerve tracts. So, let me just go in and do this. Let's cut that out of there. It's in the way. I have a place to draw over here. So your brain, there's your brain. And then the nerve tracts have one coming down the spinal cord, carrying information out of the brain, and one nerve tract carrying information into the brain, like a 2-lane highway. The sensory tract is bringing information in. For example, you touch something with your fingertip. That information you pick up from that touch has to be carried into the brain so that you can make sense out of it. So if you take your finger right now and touch it on the surface in front of you, you might get all of that information, like the surface is cold, it's hard, it's smooth. All that information goes into the brain along the sensory tract, also called afferent. Now, let's say that thing that you touched was hot and you need to pull away from it. That information will come down the motor tract, right back out to that same finger, and you pull that finger away. So sensory carries information in. Motor allows you to respond to that information and pull away if it's danger. Okay? And that is your motor tract. So know the difference between the 2. Sensory tract carries information in. Motor tract carries information out. Okay, let's look at what a nerve tract is. A group of nerves. Remember, we said that the nerves have the cell body and then the tail. Well, the tail doesn't actually touch anything. The next nerve in the tract, there's a space or a gap between them. They don't actually touch. But the nerve tract continues like a train track. And this would be your fingertip, stimulate that with a nerve impulse, and that impulse is carried along this tract all the way up into your brain. And if it's a danger signal, comes back out a different tract, all the way back to your fingertip, and you pull the fingertip away. So that's a nerve tract, and it's important for us to remember that there are gaps because these nerves don't actually touch. So think of it like a train track with gaps in the track. And each one of those gaps will have to be bridged. So all of those then are bridges along the train track, carrying it across the ravine or whatever, so that you have a nice straight track. Later on, we'll talk about what the bridges are made of. But the nerves don't actually touch each other. There's gaps between them. All right, so that's a nerve tract. Okay, one carrying in, the other one carrying out. Some of our nerve tracts are like this. And these that look this way are carrying information in both directions along that one nerve tract. So this is like a two-lane road, where this is a highway. One side going that way, the other side coming this way. This is a road that carries cars in both directions. And this would be called a mixed nerve tract. Remember, the ones going in are sensory. The ones coming out are motor. And if it carries in both directions, it's called a mixed nerve tract. A good example of a mixed nerve tract is the one that you hit when you hit your elbow on stuff. When they call that hitting your funny bone. Like, ooh. And that's why you get not just a little bit of shaking in there because it's a motor tract, but you also get the sensation. So it's a mixed nerve tract. If you hit it, you're going to get both results, a movement and then also the sensation, because it carries information in both directions. If you damage a sensory tract alone, you're going to lose or get sensation from that, like numbness and tingling or whatever. If you damage just the motor tract, you get movement. If you do both, or one that goes both ways, a mixed tract, you get the movement plus the sensation. Okay. So those are our nerve tracts. And sensory tract and motor tracts going in and going out. Now let's take a look at a neuron. And you should know that neuron is the term for nerve cell. Have that in your notes. And individual nerve cells are called neurons. Individual nerve cells are called neurons. And let's go to the text and see a picture of a neuron. So this, She's way down here, right there. Page is that? That's page 473, your neuron. And you see they're weird looking cells with their nucleus up here inside what we've already called the cell body. Now, if this was in the brain, it'd be something like this. Gray matter, white matter. Remember, the cell body is housed in the gray matter. The white matter is the tail that sticks down there like that. Okay. Now, these little trees right here look like little tree branches. That's where the nerve actually gets its stimulation from. So if this was a nerve of the finger, then you can put the finger in there like that. And if you touch something with this finger, it stimulates these branches right here called dendrites. So again, touch the fingertip to something, it stimulates the dendrite of that finger. And that starts the impulse headed up to your brain to carry all that information that you got from that touch. The dendrites again stick out like tree branches, ready to be stimulated from all directions. And if you stimulate one of them bad boys, it causes an electrical impulse to start to move through this nerve. Carrying the impulse all the way down that nerve tract to the next nerve in the tract. All right. We'll finish naming these, and then I want to go on to the whiteboard, of course, and do some drawing. That's what I like to do. As we move down into the tail part, the long tail running all the way through those structures wrapped around it is called the axon. So have your cell body with the nucleus in there, right there. The dendrites, the receiving end, and the impulse is transmitted along the axon, the long tail. In a little bit, we'll talk about what that wrapping around there is. So let's go to the whiteboard for a second and kind of re-illustrate a point. All right. So have your cell body with the dendrite sticking out. Ready to pick up information and transmit it to your brain along the axon. Okay. Now, these dendrites can be connected to one nerve or thousands of nerves can be connected to this one nerve right here. So this could be receiving information from any one of these neurons or cells and then transmitting that information to your brain for you. Down here at the end, the axon will usually come out to about 2 branches like this. And then the dendrites of the next nerve in the tract interact with the axon of the previous nerve, coming up to the cell body and then moving it on down. And always remember, there's a space right there. So if you stimulate this nerve right here, that gets transferred into this nerve, sent along the nerve tract, down and stimulates this nerve, which stimulates the next nerve and so on. It keeps going like that, all the way to where the nerve impulse needs to get to. So, what are those wrappings that were around the axon that we saw? These things right here. Those are called Schwann cells. And they are made of a substance known as myelin. M-Y-E-L-I-N. Myelin. Now, anytime you wrap or cover something, that's sometimes referred to as a sheath, like the sheath of a knife. When you put the knife in its holder, that holder is called the sheath. It covers the knife. So the Schwann cells form what's called the myelin sheath, the covering for the axon. And that does more than just cover it. Number one, it helps protect it. It wraps around it like a hot dog bun. And it keeps the myelin or the axon from becoming damaged. And if the axon does become damaged, you got all your Schwann cells wrapped around there. Your myelin sheath is intact. And what happens if you damage that nerve right there? Well, the first thing that's going to happen is your body's going to produce a new Schwann cell that's going to come to that area and fill the gap. And then your axon can regrow underneath that. So it not only protects it, but it also allows it to regenerate under there if you ever damage this. And that's why we can take off a person's finger and put it back on. All they need to do is, the neurosurgeons, they just need to line up the axon. A new nerve will come and wrap itself around that spot, and then it'll grow back together. So nerves can be repaired at the axons as long as the myelin sheath or the Schwann cells remain intact. So they not only protect it, but they also help it to grow back if it ever needs to. The other thing that the myelin sheath does for us is that when a nerve impulse, all the little red dots, when this nerve gets stimulated, that nerve impulse moves along the dendrite through the cell body, but then to the outside of the axon. It doesn't move through it. It moves on the outside of it. And every time it comes to a Schwann cell, it's going to speed up as it jumps across. Jumps to an open area and then jumps again. So this nerve impulse travels along the outside of the axon rather than through it. And why is that so important? Because each time it jumps, it's going to pick up speed. And each jump will be faster than the previous one. So think of it like boom, 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 boom. And it's constantly speeding up. When something is constantly picking up speed like that, we call it saltatory, meaning constantly picking up speed. As long as it's moving, it's getting faster and faster. So the Schwann cells are responsible for saltatory conduction, the speed of the nervous system. The Schwann cells are responsible for the speed of the nervous system, saltatory conduction. Now, do y'all remember this term right here? Autoimmune, where your immune system are attacking your own cells. Now, what do you think would happen to a person is they've developed an autoimmune disorder that attacks and destroys their Schwann cells specifically. So these people's Schwann cells are being destroyed. We call that demyelination. Their nerves are being demyelinated. Remember, we call that the myelin sheath. The myelin sheath is being eroded away. Demyelination. If a person has demyelination of their Schwann cells along the axon, what do you think is going to happen to their nervous system? They won't have saltatory conduction, and the speed is going to decrease. Their nervous system is going to slow down.
Will they be able to, I'm sorry, sir, will they be able to actually fix it again? You know how you were saying that they can repair itself? If you have like the autoimmune, it won't be able to repair again, right?
No, but remember, the Schwann cells are what allows it to repair. Their Schwann cells are being destroyed. So once this happens to them, their nervous system is going to slow down permanently. And we call that condition, I'm looking for a place to write. Multiple sclerosis, or MS. That's what Richard Pryor had. And does anybody know any other famous people that had this? I know Richard Pryor, and there are others that I've heard of, but I don't remember them right now. Richard Pryor, old comedian, I don't know if y'all even know the name, was in a movie with Eddie Murphy and Red Fox in the movie Harlem Nights, and you could tell he was sick in that movie. That's the last movie he ever made. After that, he ended up in a wheelchair. But you can tell during that movie that there was something going on about him. He wasn't healthy. So that's multiple sclerosis, and it's autoimmune. So the only thing we can do for them is to suppress their immune system. But eventually they will succumb to the disease. Their heart muscle will get weak. Their respiratory muscles won't be working right. And as a result, they will, eventually die from it. Okay. So that is what's happening when the Schwann cells around your axon are being destroyed by an autoimmune disorder. They're going to lose that speed that they allow along our nerve tracts. So not important for your testing, but just for the knowledge of how our nervous system works. The myelin sheath, the part that covers the axon. All of this is the myelin sheath. And what makes the myelin sheath are the cells that we call Schwann cells. They wrap the axon, forming a sheath around it. And because they're made of myelin, that word right there, because they're made of that, it causes the nerve impulse to speed up every time it jumps, making our nervous system very, very fast. So fast that if you were looking at it, you wouldn't see it. Our eyes wouldn't be able to discern the speed at which things are happening. So that is your neuron. And let's go back to the PowerPoint.
I have a question. So what are we losing as we get older then? Because if our cells are keep like redoing it, and you know how people, when you get older, you start slowing down, even if you don't have a disorders or diseases, like automatically your mind starts slowing down and all this other stuff. Is it the fact that our cells and our stuff isn't like rebooting as fast, or?
Yeah. And that's actually a good term, rebooting, but more accurately would probably be regenerating. Remember that all of these cells are being reproduced on a regular basis throughout your life, with the exception of our memory cells. They stay constant. But the cells in our body have to constantly be remade, regenerated, replaced. And as we get older, we don't do that as effectively. Like the cells in your skin. See, what happens to your skin as you get older?
The elasticity starts, you start losing it.
Yeah, the cells responsible for making our skin elastic, they just don't regenerate as quickly and as effectively as they did when you were a young person. The cells that transmit information around our brain, They don't regenerate, and they don't fire as rapidly as they did when you were a kid. And that's what we call getting old. It's just the body just does not produce cells as effectively as it did when you were younger. Do y'all think that that's planned in humans? That getting
Yes,
old is a plan for us?
I think so. Because if we had everybody that was able to reboot cells, well, nobody would ever die.
Right.
Be overpopulated.
I believe there is a pre-programmed life expectancy in humans. And yeah, we are doing things to extend it, but have you ever seen somebody who's 123 years old? That's the longest living person, by the way, on record, modern times, is 123 years old, or was 123 years old. Do you see that person? Frail.
Wasn't it a guy? He was still moving around pretty good.
Yeah.
It was this one guy they were just talking about.
Yeah, but you
He was
see
really
that.
pale and like stuff.
Yeah, but he wasn't running any marathons. You know what I mean? He might have been in motion, but so the idea there is that if we start living longer and longer, what's life going to be like for somebody who's 160 years old? They'll be blind. They won't be able to hear. They won't be able to move because they got the arthritis. So what's life going to be like? It makes me think about the parody or the the story with a moral. Anyway, the guy asked the genie who given 3 wishes, and he asked for eternal life. And the genie said, boom, you will now live forever. And then he asked for like $1 million and whatever. But when he asked for a long life, he forgot to ask for eternal youth. And he lived forever, could not die, and eventually ended up as just a vegetable type thing. Can't see, can't hear, can't move, but can't die either. So living long is not necessarily, in my opinion, is not necessarily a blessing, man. If you get to the point where you just ache all the time, your vision is going, your hearing is going. Anybody ever have that dog with cataracts who got so old that they couldn't see anymore, that kind of stuff? That's where we're headed to if we continue to just live longer and longer and longer and longer. We can't keep you young. We might be able to keep you alive, but we can't keep you young. So,
that's
go ahead.
what we're saying, that the reason for the coronavirus is because we were living too long and we needed to. That was one of the little issues they're saying, that our population was too high over in China. And they're trying to do population.
So they try to do population control. Okay. All right. But now remember this. Now there is going to be, and y'all will hear of this soon, I'm sure, if you haven't heard of it already. I haven't heard of it because I haven't been looking for it. But I promise you there's somebody out there who believes that the government is responsible for COVID-19. In other words, I'm not saying they're responsible because they didn't control it. I'm saying they actually went in and made it.
I think so.
It's
a little bit.
It's a form of an attack from another country. China is attacking us. They sent the virus over here and it kind of backfired on them. So they're getting a little bit of it too, but they sent it out to destroy the United States.
That's what they said about HIV as well and AIDS.
Yeah, they said the same thing about HIV. What? And you hear Trump all the time, the China virus, the China virus. The only people who call it that is the Trump administration. And you know why they call it that? Because he has bullied them. Trump is a bully.
Yeah.
And he
if
will.
You want to go there, he did. It was like the coronavirus came right after he got into it with China and said, we're not going to take your products anymore unless you tax us and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, everybody started dying. And we got this disease, man-made, this disease that happened. And it's killing off like how many people a day? And all of a sudden, they're okay over there for the most part, but we're not. They got all over the place.
Let me tell you why they're okay. Because they were ready for it. Not this one. For viruses. China, most viruses originate in China. That's a known fact right there. And when we do infection control next module, I'll explain that a little bit deeper. But most viruses are going to come from China in the first place. So they are prepared for it. When their government said, okay, guys, put your masks on, all they did was go to whatever hook in their house, take the mask down and put it on. We're running around, I don't want to wear a mask, where can I buy a mask, da, da, da. They were prepared for it and we weren't. So that's why you see better response in China, because they're prepared. And they're also in a country where if your ass doesn't wear a mask, they'll throw you into jail. Or they'll shoot you or whatever. Okay. So none of that running walk around talking about, I ain't wearing no mask because I need to breathe and I have constitutional rights and dot, dot, dot. Yeah, they'll throw your ass right in jail. So that's what I mean when I say they were more prepared for it. Here in the United States, we're not willing to accept that kind of stuff. Tell me I have to wear a mask, dot, dot, dot. People pulling guns on folks in a store and this kind of mess because they over masks and arguments and all this mess. So that's what I mean when I say they were more prepared for it. They already had the masks, and I'm not talking cloth or the surgical mask. They already had the KN95 masks for everybody. And most people already had them. Hell, half the time people in China walk around with masks on anyway. It's natural, or it's just become a common practice for them. So they were more prepared in that sense. And for us, the next time, yeah, we'll be more prepared too.
Sir, aren't they the ones that discovered the vaccination or something? Aren't they the ones that actually, quote unquote, helped us find the vaccination, and we're arguing about it right now to try to see if we can use it?
I don't know.
Over there?
No, I don't know. I haven't heard that. I have heard there are 11 vaccines in testing right now. I mean, yeah, so it's all that, necessity is the mother of invention. When are you going to create it? When you need it. Like they talk about the world's running out of water. The planet is 75% water. How the hell are we going to run out? They say we're running out of drinkable water, but that's okay, because when it becomes a problem, the desalination techniques will be improved. It's like when they were running out of ventilators. The doggone people from NASA got involved and invented a ventilator that only had like 12 moving parts or something. And that's what I mean when I say the necessity is the mother of invention. When you need it, they'll invent it. And now the respirators are just that much better because of the need. Okay. The automotive plants retooled and started making ventilators. The alcohol plants retooled and started making hand sanitizer. Necessity is the mother of invention. So if once we get through this, everything's good, everybody's got it, or everybody's been vaccinated, a new virus will come along, and guess what? We'll be more prepared next time. When you start telling people about masks, they'll know exactly what to do, where to get them from, how to wear them, when to wear them, all of that they'll know already. So the learning curve won't be as near as severe as this one. And young people next time won't be walking around talking about, well, I can't get it. Y'all hear that 2 people below the age of 15 died last week or yesterday from the coronavirus. So again, moving on. So individual nerve cells are called neurons. You should know that. We talked about these parts, the dendrites, the receiving end, the cell body that contains the nucleus. The axon is the long tail. The axon is wrapped with Schwann cells, and we call that wrapping the myelin sheath. If the myelin sheath is destroyed, it causes that condition of multiple sclerosis, an autoimmune disorder that attacks the Schwann cells, causing demyelination or destruction of the myelin sheath. Multiple sclerosis. All right. More about neurons. Some specific neurons of the body or of the nervous system appear on the neurotransmitters right here. What page is this? Page 473. And two of these will be mentioned on your test. You've already seen one of them, the ependymal cells. These are the cells in the ventricles that produce the cerebrospinal fluid. I mean, that's a test question. The ependymal cells produce cerebrospinal fluid. It's already in your slides up there, so you probably have it in your notes already. Now, this one you don't. The cell is pronounced astrocyte. Sounds like something from the Jetsons. Remember their dog was named Astro? So astrocytes. What they do is they form the blood-brain barrier. We talked about it briefly yesterday, that no blood ever enters the brain. These are the cells that keep that from happening. They form the blood-brain barrier so that no blood cells ever go into the brain tissue. And that's why your brain is always gray in color. It's not pink or, like the rest of our tissues, because no blood ever goes in there because of the astrocytes. So think of the astrocytes kind of like the bouncer at a club. You got all those cells lined up at the door waiting to get into the brain. And the bouncer is letting some cells in, but other cells, no, y'all got to keep going. Y'all can't come in. Those are blood cells. Blood cells can't go into the brain because of the astrocytes forming the blood-brain barrier. So those are the two types of neurons that you'll be asked about on your testing: astrocytes and the ependymal cells. And there you go. Astrocytes, blood-brain barrier, ependymal cells produce cerebrospinal fluid. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is the wrapping that covers all of this and protects it for us. Y'all have heard of it before. There's an image in your text way back here. Right here. On page 467. This covering is called the meninges. You see the brain with the gray matter and the white matter, and sitting right on top of that is this membrane that completely covers the brain all the way around. This is the skull bone right here. And between the skull bone and the brain are the membranes that protect the brain tissue and keep it from moving around a lot in there. Remember, there's fluid in here, the fluid represented in here, so that the brain has one membrane over it, another membrane up top, and then fluid between them that provides that little bit of movement in there. But that the brain never interacts with your skull bone at all. It has the covering over it. Now, this covering not only covers the brain itself, but it also covers the spinal cord. Get all this out the way and kind of try to illustrate that. Okay. Starting on the inside with your, where's the damn black pen? Do I have a black pen up here? Okay, anyway, let's do this one. Okay. Really? your brain and spinal cord. All right. The brain itself is covered with a membrane that comes all the way around the entire brain and then continues down the spinal cord. And it covers the entire structures all the way around. The second membrane is right on top of that, all the way around as well. Now, these membranes are about paper thin, so they don't take up a whole lot of space. It doesn't look as fat as it does on the drawing. And then one final membrane making up the entire outside. And you'll see that the brain and spinal cord are tucked nicely away inside these membranes. And the name of the membranes collectively is the meninges. And you might have heard that term in relation to meningitis. Remember, itis means inflammation or infection. So if these membranes are inflamed, they're going to be pressing on the brain and the spinal cord. And that's how dangerous meningitis is. Inflammation around your brain, meningitis. Not inflammation of the brain, but around the brain. And that's going to squish the brain and spinal cord. Meningitis can be quite dangerous. And it can be caused by bacteria or viruses, either one. All right, so the 3 layers of the meninges each have names. We'll start from the outside in. The red layer is called your dura mater. It's spelled with 1 T, but it's still pronounced matter. The dura mater. The middle membrane is the arachnoid. Arachnoid membrane, just like spider. Why is it called that? Because between these 2 membranes, the outer and the one that's very inner, the arachnoid forms connections that somebody looked at and believed that they look like a spider web. So keeping the 2 membranes together, the arachnoid. Now, what we don't have illustrated here is that right above the outer membrane, blood vessels. So these little things actually carry the nutrients into the brain so that the blood cells don't have to ever go in there. The blood cells continue to flow through, dropping off their nutrients, and then they're carried through the arachnoid down into the brain tissue. So the dura mater is the outer layer. The arachnoid is the connection between the 2 layers. And the inner layer is your pia mater. The dura, the arachnoid, and the pia. So this is how nutrients get into the brain. Every place else in the body, they get in through the blood. But in the brain, the blood can't get to the brain. So they're pulled down into the arachnoid. And from there, they can travel down into the brain tissue, allowing the blood cells to continue to flow through without actually going down in there. So you can think of the blood cell as the limousine that pulls up outside the club. Everybody gets out, goes into the club, the limousine goes and parks. It continues to flow through there. The nutrients are dropped off. Now, in these 3 layers, one of them should look familiar to y'all if you've ever had a baby and you were a sissy. So when they asked you, do you want to feel like no pain? Well, I don't want to feel nothing. I want to have a baby, but I don't want it to hurt. You know what? Y'all just wimpy, man. Your grandmama had that baby on the couch and then went in and made dinner. But not y'all. No. You don't want to feel no pain. You want 90 days off work and all this other mess. Y'all get on my nerves, man. Go back to when women were women and men were men. You know, we just wimpy today, y'all. So if you didn't want to feel any pain for your delivery, then you probably had a shot called epidural. What does that mean? Upon the dura. So when they administer the medication at the lower back, they put it right out here upon the dura and let it come through just like it does up here. The medication absorbed through and then affected the spinal cord. So when they give an epidural, they don't even penetrate the meninges. They just go outside and put it right upon the dura. Epidural, upon the dura. And AL is pertaining to. They put it upon the dura and let it absorb through, just like nutrients in the brain, except they're doing it at the spinal cord. Once that medication gets in there, you don't feel anything below that. So there you go, your epidural pertaining to the dura. Back on the slides, you see the 3 layers, pia mater inside, dura mater outside. There's your term epidural and meningitis. From this slide, you should know that the meninges are the membranes that surround and protect the brain and spinal cord. How do we know if somebody has meningitis? Well, we'll do a simple test in the clinic. And if you turn up positive for this simple test, then we'll do the spinal tap and actually take some of the fluid from the meninges and test it to see if it's infected. What's the simple test we do in the clinic? All right. I want you to think about your skull bone with your brain inside there. And the brain comes out through a hole in your skull. But the brain is also surrounded by meninges. So what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you to take your chin and put it to your chest, like that. If you do that and it hurts, it means that the meninges are being pinched right there as they come through the skull bone. Pull your head down, you get a little pinch right there. Ah, ooh, ooh. Oh yeah, let's do a spinal tap. Okay. You failed the chin-chest test. Chin to your chest, pain it. Oh man, right in the back of the neck. Ooh, that hurt. Yeah, let's do a spinal tap. Your meninges are being pinched but in the opening of your skull bone when you pull your head down like that. And that's how simple it is. Fail that, we'll do a spinal tap. Take some of the fluid out and actually test it for virus and bacteria. Now, meningitis tends to happen around water. So if you're at a Boy Scout camp or summer camp, or you're on the swim team in college, you tend to see outbreaks of meningitis after swim meets or after summer camp. Now, the thing about this, how simple is this, guys? There was a TI at Lackland, a drill instructor at Lackland, who just last year went in to see for sick call because he had flu-like symptoms. And the PA that he saw diagnosed him with flu-like symptoms and sent him home, put him on quarters. He came back after the 24-hour quarters, saw the same PA, physician assistant, who again diagnosed him with flu-like symptoms and sent him home. This time he put him on 72-hour quarters instead of 24 hours. In other words, you go home for 3 days, come back, and we'll see. So he put him on 72-hour quarters. The guy went home and died. He was 29 years old. Turns out he had meningitis. And the physician assistant kept diagnosing him with flu-like symptoms. And how simple was it? Hey, dude, I'll tell you what, before you leave, do me a favor. Go ahead and put your chin to your chest. Let me know if that causes neck pain. Or let me know what that feels like. Just have the person do like, do a spinal tap. That's how simple it is, y'all. And this was a PA. And I'm pretty sure that the PA has been whatever. But anyway, since I'm diagnosed with somebody with flu-like symptoms, when it's that easy to get a pre-diagnosis of meningitis, just have them put their chin to their chest.
That is great.
That's horrible.
Flu-like symptoms, okay.
Guy was 29 years old and died from meningitis. That could have been treated. He had 4 days to treat it. And we sent him home 24 hours the first, 72 hours on the second set of quarters. He had it for 4 days. They could have diagnosed him back on day one. Put your chin to your chest. All right, so that is meninges and the membranes that surround and protect the brain and spinal cord. And then what meningitis is. The next thing we want to talk about are these things right here. I want to go back to the whiteboard to show you what they are. I know I called it quick, but I'll write it up here because we've written it already. I told y'all we'd be talking about them later. They're called neurotransmitter. What do they do? All right. Y'all remember we did that nerve tract and we were showing, and I asked y'all to remember the fact that the nerve tract has gaps in it and the nerves don't actually touch each other. All right, what does a neurotransmitter do? There it is. Neurotransmitters bridge the gaps in the nerve tract, making it one long continuous tract. So that's what neurotransmitters do. They bridge the gaps in our nervous system. So that now that nerve impulse that starts right here can travel uninterrupted along that nerve tract. Because neurotransmitters are the bridges between nerves. Neurotransmitters. All right, now in the PowerPoint, right here, required for a nerve impulse to cross a synapse. What is that word? A synapse is all those gaps. So if you do the nerve tract again, that opening right there is a synapse. So neurotransmitters are required for a nerve impulse to cross the synapse between nerves, giving us one long, steady track with no interruptions. So that's what that statement means. A neurotransmitter is required for a nerve impulse to cross a synapse. A neurotransmitter is required for a nerve impulse to cross a synapse. Examples of neurotransmitter, we've already talked about one, dopamine, the neurotransmitter of the brain. and the other one is pronounced acetylcholine. We'll be talking about that when we do the muscles. It's the neurotransmitter of our muscular system. A sample test question. Name the substance that's required for a nerve impulse to cross the synapse, the neurotransmitter. Dopamine and acetylcholine are examples of neurotransmitters. So 2 test questions right there. Name the substance that's required for a nerve impulse to cross the synapse, a neurotransmitter. And dopamine and acetylcholine are examples of neurotransmitters. As in your test questions, start picking out words to focus on. If you see the word synapse, there's only one thing that we've talked about that's associated with a synapse. So start picking out key words in these questions as you're writing them, thinking about them or whatever, studying them or whatever. Look for key words in there. My daughter had to take her concealed carry test the other day, and she was looking at stuff, and I said, babe, see that right there? 0.8. As soon as you see that, the answer is boom, because there was only one thing associated with that. So examples of neurotransmitters are dopamine and acetylcholine. We've talked about this already, but we didn't get the test question. And there it is. A brain disorder characterized by gradual and progressive mental deterioration, personality changes, impairment of functioning. You see that long ass question. Oh yeah, that's Alzheimer's, man. I remember that long question. Again, this is the type of stuff you are focusing on, Alzheimer's. And notice the spelling, it is not old timers. You know, I've ever heard somebody call it that, old timers disease. Yeah, I get it all the time. My grandmama had the old timers disease. No, Alzheimer's, dude. His name is the person's last name. It doesn't mean anything. It's the last name of the person that discovered it or the first gave it a name. Alzheimer's. I'm in the mail, dude. I wonder if you got anything for me. Come on, mailman, hook me up. I don't think there's anything good in there. Anyway, our mailman is old, y'all. This dude, the other couple weeks ago, everybody's mail was one house off. So you saw everybody walking next door to take people their mail because the dude had it just one address off, and everybody got their neighbor's mail. So he's just getting old. He need to retire. Anyway, so that's Alzheimer's, brain disorder characterized by gradual and progressive mental deterioration, personality changes, and impairment in daily functioning. Now, that's the technical definition, but y'all know what's happening. Their brain cells, their memory cells are being destroyed. Getting old, tired. All right, so that's Alzheimer's, and what that is. It's 10:35. Let's take another break. This time, let's take a 20-minute break. Come back at 5 minutes till. Get up, walk around, get some circulation to your butt, And when we come back, we'll talk about strokes and what those things are. All right, so come back at 5 minutes till. Give us 20 minutes. All right, welcome back, everybody. Before we start talking about strokes, there's something else I want to talk about, and that is the fact that our bones that make up our backbone and our neck stacked on top of each other like this. Those bones are called vertebrae. We'll talk about them a little more when we do the skeletal system. But why we're talking about them now is that your spinal cord runs along the backside of these, and the peripheral nerves come out between them like this. So if one of these bones gets misaligned in some way, it's going to pinch that nerve that's coming out of there. That's called a doggone, I'm spelling it wrong. A radiculopathy. Sounds like just like ridiculous, but it's not spelled that way. A radiculopathy. It's a pinched nerve, a nerve that's being compressed by a vertebrae. And as a result, you're going to get a sensation along this nerve. It's being pinched up there. I have one in my upper back, one that comes out down my left hand, all the way down to my 2 fingers right here. And so every now and then I move a certain way, these 2 fingers will get paresthesia, that sense of that prickly feeling, like needles, like when your foot falls asleep. I get that in my 2 fingers every now and then. The word that I'm using is paresthesia, the prickly feeling, or the pins and needles feeling that you get in extremity sometimes, like when your foot falls asleep. So that's paresthesia. So I have that because I have a vertebrae up here that's pinching my 6th cervical nerve, the one that goes down to these 2 fingers. Yeah. So that's what a radiculopathy is, or pinched nerve, when somebody's talking about that. Okay. It's coming along your peripheral nerves, and it's whichever one is being pinched by a vertebrae in there. It happened to me when they did my heart surgery. They opened my chest, and that caused all these bones to be kind of shifted. When they pulled my chest open, all those bones got shifted up around here, and one of them got shifted down onto that nerve. The only way to fix it is to go in and do surgery on my back, and I don't want that, so I just deal with it. So that's a radiculopathy, or a pinched nerve. And the sensation you're going to get from that is paresthesia, or that prickly, the pins and needles feeling you get in a foot or a hand or something. Okay. This is also a good time for us to talk about paralysis. Okay. Your spinal cord comes down your vertebrae down to about the level of the belly button, and then it splits into 2 nerves going down each leg, okay, with the peripheral nerves coming off of the spinal cord out to the different parts of the body. Now, if you sever your spinal cord, you're not going to feel anything below that. Okay. All of this will be cut off to the brain. Sensations are still going along these nerves, but they can't get to the brain because it's been severed right there. It's like the bridge is out. And as a result, the traffic can't continue. So the brain will never get sensation from below that point ever again. We can't repair the spinal cord. There's a lot of research out there, and they're getting really close, but not quite. So once you cut that, that's it. No more sensation below the area of the cut. If you sever the spinal cord at the back or anywhere below the shoulders, you're going to have what we call paraplegia. Para meaning beside or partial, where you won't feel your legs. Probably not the genitals, your bladder, all those things you're going to lose control over. Okay? If you sever up above the shoulders, up in your neck, is quadriplegia. Quadra meaning 4. You're going to lose sensation to all 4 extremities. So that's the difference between paraplegia and quadriplegia, where the break happens. If it happens below the shoulders, you'll be paraplegic. If it happens above the shoulders, you'll be quadriplegic. Okay. Now, one form of quadriplegia tends to confuse people. They say a person is quadriplegic, but then they see the person pushing a wheelchair on their own. How do you push a wheelchair if you're quadriplegic? Doesn't that mean you can't move your arms? No. Quadriplegia means that your arms are involved. They may not be completely involved. And what do I mean by that? There are 3 nerves that come out from the spinal cord and go down your arm. The 6th, 7th, and 8th cranial nerves. Okay. And I just did those backwards. Well, they come out that way, 6, 7, 8, but they run like this: 6, 7, 8. So 6 goes to your little finger. 7 goes to the 2 other fingers. So we'll call those the 1st and 2nd digits, or pointer and ring finger. Pointer and ring finger. And 8th goes to your thumb and the palm of your hand. So if you sever up here, up like right there, up here in your neck, where 6 gets maintained, but you lose 7 and 8, you're going to still have sensation in your 2 fingers right here. But the other 2 fingers and the thumb, you won't be able to feel those or move those. And the palm of your hand, you won't be able to move. But you'll still have sensation in these 2 fingers down this side of the hand and up the back of your arm. So you can still move your arm. But you are quadriplegic because 7 and 8 were involved. You can maintain 6, but 7 and 8 are cut off. So you're still quadriplegic, even though you can move your arms. So not all quadriplegics are full, inability to use their arms. Some can still push their own wheelchairs. And the way you can tell if somebody in a wheelchair is paraplegic or quadriplegic is the way they're pushing the chair. If they are grasping the rims with their hands and pushing those silver or black rims to move the wheels, they are paraplegic because they can still move their palm and grasp with their fingers. If they're quadriplegic, we're going to attach little knobs to the rims on the chair, and they can push those with the heels of their hands like this and move their wheelchair like that because they can't grasp. So if they have the little knobs on there and you see them pushing with the heels of their hands like this, that's a quadriplegic. If they're grabbing the rims and pushing them, they're paraplegic. Now, why do we always put these folks in a manual chair? Why don't we just give them the power chair where they can just move the little thing and move anywhere they want without having to push? Because pushing is exercise for them. And once somebody ends up in a wheelchair, their life expectancy is expected to be 7 years. And how do we extend that? By giving them a manual chair and making them exercise. And as a result, it extends the life expectancy. And they can live a long life as long as they stay healthy sitting in that damn chair. And that's why we always promote wheelchair basketball, wheelchair Olympics, wheelchair races, the whole 9 yards. Anything that gets them active in that chair. The last thing we want is somebody sitting in a wheelchair watching TV all day. Their life expectancy will be about 7 years. And the thing that will get them eventually will be pneumonia. Not getting any activity, this stuff is building up in their lungs. When we put them in that chair and have them push it, they clear the lungs and they don't develop the pneumonia. So that is a little bit about the paralysis, the difference between quadriplegia and paraplegia. I also want you to take a look at these nerves, the 6, 7, and 8, they all run through the armpit. So if you put a person on crutches and that person gets the crutch up in their armpit like that, and you've seen them do it before, they take a pair of crutches right there and they just lean on those crutches. While they're standing, they just lean on them and they let the crutch put pressure in their armpit right there. That's going to lead to a condition called Erb's palsy. We also call it crutch palsy, from leaning on the crutches like that. Babies can get it from being hung by their arm. When a baby's born, you hang them by the arm like that, or your kid. You ever see somebody playing with the kid? They pick the kid up by the arms like this, and the kid is dangling by their arms. That kid could end up with Erb's palsy, damage to the nerves passing through their armpits like that. So one of your jobs is going to be to fit crutches to people. A person come in, doc said, Mom, give them a pair of crutches, teach them to swing through gait and go on and send them home. Y'all will learn that as part of your classes. Swing through, swing to, how to use crutches. And you'll also be fitting them to the crutches. And when you fit a set of crutches to somebody, one of the first things you do is you put your hand in their armpit like this. The crutch should be at least 4 fingers down from touching their armpit. So crutches shouldn't be here, they should be down here. And that's why when you see them on them, you see them leaning on them, because the crutch doesn't come all the way to the armpit like that, preventing them from developing crutch palsy or Erb's palsy by compressing the nerves in their armpit. So that is a little bit about paralysis. You will learn how to fit a person to a set of crutches, how to teach a person to walk on crutches. Remember, we called it the crutch gait, how you walk on the things, how to go upstairs, how to open doors and things like that while you're on crutches. You'll learn all of that as part of your MA and PCT classes. You'll also learn how to push somebody in a wheelchair. I know that sounds weird, doesn't it? You just grab it and push, don't you? No. You have to learn how to handle a wheelchair, how to go up ramps. Did you know that whenever you go, ever see somebody on a wheelchair that's trying to get through a door and they're leaning forward, trying to push the door open and push their way through with the wheelchair? That's why we go through doors backwards with wheelchairs. You always turn around and back through the door. That way you're not having to worry about opening the door. You open the door with your back and you pull the person through. So these are things you're going to learn as part of your classes: how to manage wheelchairs, how to push somebody on a gurney. Do y'all know how hard that shit is? You ever seen somebody pushing somebody down the hallway on a gurney? You know how easy it is for that damn thing to get away from you? If you have to turn left, next thing you know, it's like the car that's skidding through the turn. That thing swings way and and it actually requires some musculature. You'll find yourself tired after pushing somebody down to X-ray on a gurney, especially if you've got the IV pole with you. You're trying to push the gurney with one hand, trying to pull the IV pole with the other. Guys, that's exhausting. So you'll learn all that as part of your classes. Not only how to be safe with the patient, but how to keep yourself from being hurt. pushing somebody in a wheelchair or on a gurney. All right. So anyway, that's paralysis and issues that, lead to paralysis, the severing of the spinal cord and so on. Now, our nerves, or the peripheral nerves, when they come into the spinal cord, remember we had, we'll say this is the arm, and you have a motor tract and a sensory tract. Remember, sensory tract is headed towards the brain. Motor tract is headed out. When they reach the spinal cord itself, the sensory nerve comes into the back, and the motor nerve comes out the front, and with the spinal cord there. So if you were looking straight down on their spinal cord, you'll see the cord traveling down their body, sensory nerve coming in the back, motor nerve coming out the front, headed down their arm. Now, between them is going to be a specialized nerve. You see what it does? It connects the two tracts. So even though the information is also being carried up to the brain, the nerve tract and the sensory tract are actually connected inside the spinal cord. Now, what that allows is, let's say you have a signal coming up your spinal cord, a sensory signal from your fingertip, comes into the spinal cord, but then travels up to your brain. But what if it's a danger signal? A signal that says that thing is hot, you need to get away from it. The signal will also cross this specialized nerve between them and go right back out the motor tract. So what you get then is this. Comes in, right back out, and you do what? Ooh, you pull your finger away. So that small nerve right in between them interneuron, which means between neurons. It connects the sensory and motor tract. So that if there's a danger signal comes in here, it not only goes up to the brain, but it also crosses the interneuron and goes right back out the motor tract and allows you to pull away quickly. So interneurons are responsible for the reflex arc. In, right back out the motor tract so you can pull away quickly. The signal still gets sent up to the brain, but you've actually pulled away before you even realize what the danger is. Touch, ooh, that was hot. See what happened? Touch, ooh, that was hot. I've pulled away before my brain even registered what the danger was. The reflex arc, the responsibility of your interneurons, connecting the sensory tract and the motor tract so that you can pull away or respond quicker, and you have those reflex actions. All right, so that's how our sensory and motor tracts are connected, allowing us to reflex real quickly rather than wait for our brain to tell us to. All right. And let's talk briefly about, but I'm not going to spend too much time on these things. Not this, but the thing I'm getting ready to bring up. Get all that out of there because I don't want to save it. All right. And I think there's actually an image of there it is. The motor tract or sensory tract coming in the back, motor tract coming out the front, but they're not showing here is the interneuron between them. All right. But here's the stuff I want to talk about, these bad boys right here. These are called the cranial nerves. They're on page 469. These are the nerves that are responsible for things in and around the face. So rather than traveling the spinal cord, they come right off the brain and right out to the part that they're affecting. So they don't follow the spinal cord because they're responsible for things like chewing, and that's your trigeminal nerve. If you remember may not remember, but from last module when we talked about the temporomandibular joint and this nerve coming out to service your jaw. And if you get a brain freeze, that's the nerve that's responsible for that, the trigeminal nerve. But starting up here with cranial nerve, there are 12 cranial nerves. Cranial nerve 1 goes out and brings you the sense of smell. Number 2 is the optic nerve, is vision. Now, of the cranial nerves, 3 of them are involved in eye movement. The ocular motor, the trochlear, and finally the abducens, which is down here. Also eye movement. So 3 of the 12 nerves are responsible for eye movement: ocular motor, trochlear, and abducens. The trigeminal nerve, facial and oral sensation. Trigeminal nerve also gives us chewing. Abducens is eye movement. The facial nerve is for taste, eye movement, tears, and saliva. Vestibulocochlear nerve is responsible for hearing and balance. And we'll look at that one when we do the ears. And then the glossopharyngeal nerve is responsible for taste and swallowing. The vagus nerve, number 10. This is the only one that goes to our abdominal organ, or our internal organs, the vagus nerve, the chest and the abdominal sensation, heart rate, bronchi, peristalsis in our digestive tract, and so on, all coming from the vagus nerve. The accessory nerve is for swallowing and then vocal cord and movements of the neck, and the hypoglossal below the tongue, responsible for movements of the tongue. So all of these are things up in our head and ears: hearing, smelling, taste, chewing, swallowing, saliva, eye movement, sensations in the face are all controlled by the cranial nerves. They don't follow the spinal cord, but they all come out and just service this area of our head. And that's why when you have paralysis, it doesn't affect any of your face at all. The movement of your eyes, your ability to smell, taste, chew, none of that's affected because none of these nerves follow the spinal cord. Okay. Now, back for just a second, and I don't test on those, but if you take anatomy too, you'll have to go through and name all of these and what they actually are responsible for. All right. Now back to paralysis for just a minute, something that I didn't mention that I should have. When you are paralyzed from the waist down or from the neck down, you're quadriplegic or paraplegic. Does that mean that your sex life is over? What do y'all think? Is sex life done?
No, I think it counts of what you have. If you have the one that you could have filling down there, you still be able to do it.
No.
It's probably not be able to move.
Remember, both forms of paraplegia, you're going to lose sensation to the genitals. Because whether it's paraplegia at the back or quadriplegia at the neck, either way, anything below here is going to be lost. If it's quadriplegia, you lose all of this as well. If it's paraplegia, you lose this stuff down here. But both are going to involve the genitals. So you're not going to have sensation in the genitals. Does that mean your sex life is over?
Is that more for like women? I mean, for male?
No,
Is that
both.
more?
Both.
Because you hear about men who marry women that are like wheelchair bound and they seem to still be happy. So,
Yeah. Hey,
so
they
women
still.
are fine. It's just the
Yeah.
guys.
No, 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 no. Nobody will feel anything down there, male or female. Period. You're not going to feel anything. That's all there's to it.
Oh,
If you are female, the clitoris, vaginal penetration, all that, you won't feel any of that. And males, the sensation of around the penis, they won't feel any of that. So they get no sensation from the genitals. So does that mean their sex life is over? Okay. Remember that, and any 14, 12, 13, 14-year-old boy will tell you this. You don't have to be touched to get an erection. Erections are stimulated by sensation, but they are caused by blood flow. As long as you have good blood flow to that part of the body, you can still attain erection. And remember, for men, and especially, arousal can come also from seeing it, not just being touched. And y'all know that. And how do y'all know that? Fragrance Hollywood, Victoria's Secret. Why do y'all do all that? Because you know men are stimulated visually. If it looks good, it is good. So y'all try to make it look good. All right. So a male can attain an erection with no sensation. And that erection will allow penetration. And sex can happen. It's just the person doesn't feel it. It doesn't feel good at the genitals.
so can they still get get people pregnant and all that stuff as well?
Yes. Yes. They still ejaculate. They just won't feel it. And somebody will have to tell them when the sex is over. However, remember this, guys. If you lose sensation to half your body, what's going to happen to the other half? Hypersensitive. You start to develop other areas of the skin that become hypersensitive. And it's different in everybody. In other words, you can still have a form of an orgasm. Remember, orgasm is typically associated with ejaculation, but you can still have a form of an orgasm, even though it's not associated with ejaculation. I saw a video on some of these people. I didn't have any of them as my patients, but we saw this in school. One guy was quadriplegic, and he said that when they had sex, his girlfriend obviously would be on top, and he would lie back, and she would manage everything. But he said when she touched him right between the eyebrows, it just drove him batshit. Another guy claimed that his girlfriend would nibble on his chin and just drove him absolutely crazy. Okay. So it doesn't mean that they don't have sensation. They just don't have sensation down there. Yeah. They get hypersensitive in other parts, especially in the face. Remember, they can still feel all this. So the stroking of the face, the rubbing between the eyebrows, the nibbling on the chin, all of that is hypersensitive now. And think of it like having a clitoris on your chin, if you will. Just say it just drove him crazy. So it doesn't mean sex life is over for either. There have been quadriplegic women who've had babies. Everything still works. You just can't feel it. So obviously delivering the baby was not painful at all for a quadriplegic lady. But, so the sex can still happen, and impregnation can still happen. It's just that they don't feel it when it's happening. They feel it in other parts of the body instead. Now, another common issue with people is where the spinal cord splits and heads down each leg. Those branches right there, the largest branch of that is called the sciatic nerve. And if you damage this or pinch it or squeeze it off in some way, it's going to cause the paresthesia down your leg. And we call that sciatica. And that's what sciatica is. You've damaged that sciatic nerve. It's being pinched somewhere. And most commonly, it's going to happen in people with prolonged sitting. When I taught in the classroom up until what, April, or when did we start this? Whatever. But before we started the virtual classes, y'all, I never sat down. It was all standing, moving back and forth in the classroom. Since we started this sitting down shit, sciatica. My left side of my left foot is tingling right now. So I've got to go in. I told my wife, book me an appointment so I can go see a neurologist, see if there's something I can do about this sciatica. Right now I'm sitting on my pillow. The pillow I actually sleep. I hope I don't pass gas because I'm sitting on the pillow I actually sleep on because, you know, the sciatica, man. That chair yesterday, when I finished teaching yesterday, man, my foot was just like, zzz, it was just buzzing because that chair was so freaking hard, even though I had my pillow on there too. So today I'm hoping it won't be too bad. That's why I keep telling my wife I need a new office chair, one of the big, you know, brown, black ones with all the cushion and all that. If you're going to be sitting down all day, yeah, you might develop some sciatica. And that's also the nerve that we don't want to hit when we give people injections in the hip. If you hit the sciatic nerve, it's going to cause that tingling. And then later in life, they may have sciatica from now on. So when giving injections in the hip, it's very important that we do not interact with that sciatic nerve coming through there. How do you know where it is? Look at a person's butt cheek. The sciatic nerve comes right off their spinal cord and across their butt cheek like this and down their leg. That's why when we give injections, we visually section in the quarters and visually section in the quarters again and give the injection out here. So we are well away. Actually, the sciatic nerve actually comes through here like that. So we are well away from that nerve when we give that injection out there, making sure we don't cause sciatica in them by damaging that nerve. So that's the nerve going down each leg, crosses over the butt cheek like that, and then down. We go way out here to make sure that we don't interact with that nerve when giving injections. So that's what sciatica is. Damage to the sciatic nerve, the nerve that runs down your leg. Some people pronounce it sciatica, but I've always heard sciatica. All right, so that is a little bit about paralysis and what's happening in those folks. So what we want to talk about now is the cerebrovascular accident, or CVA, is a medical term for stroke. All right. So a person has had a right-sided CVA or a left-sided CVA. Mine was right-sided. So since I had a right-sided stroke, what side of my body did it affect? Anybody?
The left.
The left side, right? Remember, the right brain controls the left side of the body. So my stroke was over here, therefore the effects were on the left side. Okay, so what is a stroke? Mine was caused by a blood clot that cut off oxygen to the brain cells on that side. So the blood vessel coming up to my brain developed a blood clot in there, cutting off blood flow. So the blood was being stopped by that. And until that blood clot is broken up, whatever's on the other side of that starts to die off. In this case, it happened in my brain, therefore brain cells started to die. All right, and some loss of control on the left side. Now, you don't just have a stroke, you stroke. and it will continue until we do something to stop it. So you're gonna say, well, I had a stroke. Well, yeah, you stroked until we stopped it. Okay. Now, what is it that will stop a stroke from happening? If it's being caused by a blood clot, and we'll actually be talking about blood clots tomorrow. What's one way that you can break up a blood clot that's stuck inside your blood vessel in there?
You cut it open, you remove it.
Nope. Something you can do at home.
Massage it.
Nope.
Baby
Anybody else?
aspirin.
Oh, heat pads and all that?
Baby aspirin, yeah.
Oh,
Aspirin.
shit.
Aspirin busts up blood clots. Okay. So that's one way you can dissolve that blood clot and restore blood flow in there. And you get good blood flow back. So that's what I mean when I say you're going to stroke until that blood clot is resolved in there. Now, some people will not have a blood clot, but they'll develop plaque inside their blood vessels. Plaque is a hard substance. Y'all have heard of hardening of the arteries. It just builds up in there, and it does the same thing, cuts off blood flow to the other side. That's going to have to go in there and clean that out of there. Luckily for me, mine was a blood clot. So what did I do? All right. I was at home playing a video game or a computer game. And I reached over to do something on the keyboard with my left hand, and the hand just kind of plopped down on the keyboard. And I was like, wait, what the? Oh, hell no. My hand was numb. So I went in the kitchen, lit a cigarette, and touched it on the back of my hand. I didn't feel it. I was like, oh, shit, man, I'm having a stroke. So what do y'all think I did? Went into the bathroom and popped a handful of aspirin. Not a aspirin, I'm talking a few. I don't know how many, but I just popped them in and drove myself to the emergency room. Now,
So is that why with people with high blood pressure, sometimes they start you on aspirin, where you won't be getting the blood clot before they give you like blood pressure medicine? They usually will start you on an aspirin regime.
regimen.
Yeah, regimen, that's the word.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Is that for that, to stop the blood clotting, or because you already have it?
Whenever we put somebody on an aspirin regimen, it's for that reason, to keep blood clots from happening. Because aspirin not only busts up blood clots, but it keeps them from forming. So anytime somebody's on an aspirin regimen, it's for that reason, for blood clots. So anyway, I got myself to the emergency room. As I was walking into the emergency room, my left foot started to drag a little bit. I'm like, oh shit, man. Got in, sat down, the doc came in, they got me checked in and all that. By the time the doctor walked in to see me, I was already moving my fingers again. So the aspirin only took, 20 minutes to bust up that blood clot. And that's why I'm not all stroked out. Y'all know what I mean? The person that the arm dragging the leg when they walk and all that, that's somebody who went to bed at night and stroked all night long. Woke up in the morning and found out they couldn't move their left side. As a result of that, I won't go to sleep if I have a headache. Because I did have a headache at the time I was playing the computer game as well. So I won't go to sleep if I have a headache. My fear is that I'm going to lay there and stroke all night. So I'll just sit up and watch TV or whatever until my headache goes away, and just constantly monitor myself. How do you monitor yourself? All right. What do you do? What can you do to determine whether somebody might be having a stroke or not? The first three letters of stroke. Have them smile. And you'll see something like this. One side goes up, the other side doesn't. Have them smile. Have them talk. Because believe it or not, one side of their tongue will be numb. And they'll say words, they'll slur their words when they talk. The third, have them raise their arms. So you'll see something like this, where one arm goes up, but the other one is just kind of hanging there. Okay. Smile, talk, raise your arms. They fail any one of those three, get them to the emergency room. So the doctor walked in. He said, Moan, have you done anything? I said, yeah, I took a handful of aspirin. He said, okay. And they admitted me upstairs for observation. I'd already done the treatment. In the hospital, we're going to give you not aspirin, but we'll give you tissue plasminogen activator. Not important. We call it TPA. They'd give me TPA if I hadn't taken the aspirin already. He said, oh, you took aspirin already? Okay, well, we're going to admit you upstairs for observation. And I was released the next morning. I had no lasting effects of the stroke. Well, I do have some lasting effects. You want to see it? Here it is. Okay, this is my right hand. No problem. My left hand. So I do have some lasting effect of the stroke, but no major effects. It has to do with how long before we get you treated. So if somebody's conscious and you think they're having a stroke, give them aspirin, man. If it's not, then the aspirin's not going to help them, but it's not going to hurt them either. If it is a stroke, you may prevent them from being the person that's just drooling and just completely stroked out on one side. So that's my fear, guys, that eventually I'm going to end up like that. And therapy can actually bring you back from this, believe it or not. Because our brain does have the ability to map itself around damaged areas. One thing that we didn't mention is that within our spinal column, the nerve tracts are pretty straight. The nerve tract going out to your arm is definitely straight. So if you sever that one, it's not easy, but you know, it's possible for a doctor to come along and reattach that nerve tract. But in your brain, your nerve tracts look like this. These things go all over the freaking place. Billions of connections in there. One nerve could end up being connected to dozens of other ones. So if you sever a connection right here, this is what could happen to you. Instead of crossing here, you see what happened? That's remapping. It can't get through there, therefore it goes around. These billions and trillions of connections in there. And that's why we can't repair the brain. Who can make all these freaking connections and make sense out of them? Remember, when you're looking at these, if you're even seeing these, you're seeing them through those ultra magnified things. You ever seen the surgeon put the glasses on and they have those little round ultra magnifiers on there? Yeah. If you're even seeing these, you're seeing them through those. And who can go in there and make trillions of connections and make sense out of what needs to be connected to what? You come along and you see something like this. Where's the damage there? You might not even be able to see it. Is that, should this one be connected here or should it be connected over there? Nobody can make sense out of all of this. So that's why we can't repair brain tissue. We can't remake the connections in there like we can in an arm, where you have one end, another end. Okay, just connect those two. And that's why we can put a finger back on. We can put an arm back on, but we can't get up in here and repair the brain. The problem in the spinal cord, even though they're all straight, the problem in there is that there are trillions of them. And who can go in there and one at a time connect all these bad boys? Nobody. So what are they doing? Stem cells. Hoping that they will, if you take spinal cord stem cells and inject one right here, maybe that will make a connection and connect those two. All right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a condition in which the person they have a form of paralysis. However, paralysis involves motor and sensory. So once you cut the spinal cord, you won't move anything below that, and you won't feel anything below that. But if you have, stop writing on who wrote on there? Stop writing on my stuff. I can't even erase y'all. Well, there you go again. Stop writing. Amyotrophic lateral. Stop erasing. Y'all better stop. Who is that? Stop erasing me. Okay, guys, come on now. Somebody's doing something on the whiteboard. Okay, whether you know you're doing it or not. Okay. All right. All right. That's AMY, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, also called Lou Gehrig's disease. What is this? This is loss of motor function, but you maintain sensation. So you can't move, but you can still feel. Now, give us a little bit of thought and tell me what you think. Would you, if you had to have one of the conditions, paralysis, total paralysis, no movement or feeling, or ALS, where you can't move, but you can still feel, which one would you rather have if you had to have one? You got to pick one. Which one would you?
ALS.
Which one?
Renee, I'm saying ALS.
ALS, why?
Because I can still feel stuff. So if my kids hug me or I can feel touch, I won't burn myself by accident because I can actually feel it.
Yeah, sex still feels good. Yeah.
Right, there you go.
Okay, all right, okay, all right. But think about this now. Your foot itches. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it because you can't move.
I could tell somebody to come itch my foot or get
That's
one of
if
those
somebody-
licks, use your
That's
mouth,
if
right?
somebody's there. I mean, like,
What about, don't they usually stick stuff in people's mouth and then you can use their mouth to,
Yeah, you might have a long stick that you can put in your mouth and scratch your foot. But okay, how long y'all been sitting in the chair? And you know when you've been sitting in the chair in a while, what happens to your butt? Oh man. Now you can feel that, but you can't. You can just sit there and oh man, my butt hurts. Uh-oh. Okay. And there is nothing I can do about it but sit here and feel it. I can't shift. So being able to feel and not move could be a curse. In other words, you have a pain, but there is nothing you can do about it. At least when you're paraplegic or quadriplegic, when you're sitting in that wheelchair, your butt doesn't hurt because you can't feel it. And by the way, one of the things that you're going to teach people when they're paraplegic and quadriplegic about that damn wheelchair is that about every 30 minutes or so, they better shift their body weight, even though they can't feel it at all. If you ever find yourself around somebody in a wheelchair for a period of time, just, don't stare at them, but watch them. And they learn that about every 30 minutes or so, you'll see them just raise their butt and shift.
Does that help with like butt? What is it? They're not called butt sores. What do they call it? Bed sores. There you go.
Bed sores, yeah.
So that's for that, because you can get that sitting in the wheelchair, right?
If they didn't shift every 30 minutes or so, they'd have constant ulcers on their tissues of their butt. So they learn to just shift about every 30 minutes or so. And how do you do that? Doing therapy. When you're doing other stuff, shift. Okay. And every now and after a while, it becomes just a natural action in them to just shift their butt every 30 minutes or so. In ALS, you can't do that, but you can feel it happening to you. So that butt sore, you'll feel it happening, and there's nothing you can do about it. ALS is autoimmune, but their immune system only attacks the motor tracts. The sensory tracts remain intact. So that's ALS. Now, there's a story associated with this. The story involves 3 ladies who all worked in Hollywood. They were sisters. One of them was a choreographer, worked on dance moves and things. Like, what's her name? Y'all know what I'm talking about. The other one was the person who does like the set decorations, sets up the scenes and all that. And the third one was the person that hires on the extras who work in the movie. So all 3 working in Hollywood. One of the ladies developed the condition of ALS, and it happened to be the choreographer, the dancer. So she could move or she could feel, but she couldn't move. When the doctors assessed her, you have ALS, it's autoimmune, there's nothing we can do about it. This is going to be your life from now on. You probably won't live past how long? Anybody remember? Probably won't live past
7 years.
7 years. Sorry. But the sisters, they didn't take that, they didn't accept that. They didn't take no for an answer. So they held a fundraiser in Hollywood, and they invited all their, connections. George Clooney was the master of ceremonies. Michelle Pfeiffer, Ben Stiller, all these people showed up to support them. And they ended up raising $17 million for ALS research. Now, most people would have taken that money and handed it over to some research organization out there. But they said, nope. They put out the word. All you researchers out there, you want some of this money? You come to work for us. And you research what the hell we tell you to. If they'd have turned over that 17 million to whatever organization out there, they would have been researching the cold and the COVID-19 and all this other shit. They said, no, you want some of this money? You come to work for us. And you research only what we tell you to. They started their own research foundation for ALS. Now, the government, their research was leading them in the direction of stem cell research. Stem cells is the way to go with this. But the United States government, you remember the Michael J. Fox scenario when they had the hearings on stem cell research, they shut this shit down. No, if you don't work for the government, you're not doing stem cell research in the United States. So they said, screw you then. Shit. They moved their foundation to Singapore. And all those researchers went with them. And within just a few years, they developed a treatment using stem cell research that cured ALS in white mice. Why is that so important? When we do research on the human conditions, we try to find an animal whose system works almost exactly as ours does. And in white mice, their nervous system is almost identical to ours. So if you can cure ALS in a white mouse, that means that you are that close to curing it in humans. So because these ladies wouldn't take no for an answer, a cure for ALS may be just around the corner. You might see it in your lifetime. But that's not all. Because they were nonprofit, they were able to turn their research over to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, researching what? Parkinson's disease. And guess what they did with it? They cured Parkinson's in a white mouse using the same research. That's not all. They also turned the research over to people who were researching quadriplegia and paraplegia. And guess what these people did? They severed the spinal cord of a white mouse, did the treatment, and the mouse was walking again. So because these three ladies decided they would not take no for an answer, ALS, Parkinson's, and paralysis are that close to being cured today. Michael J. Fox is on the treatments right now. So that's what you call empowering. In other words, just taking the power yourself, man. If somebody's telling you no, don't accept that. Like one guy who developed a type of leukemia called hairy cell leukemia. Literally, the cells actually grow hairs out of them. So it's called hairy cell leukemia. And the doctor told him there is no treatment for it. Sorry, do your bucket list and prepare to die. This guy started doing a little bit of research on his own, and he found that there was a organization in California that was experimenting with that type of leukemia, and they had a pretty good success rate. He went and asked his doctor about that, and his doctor told him, I don't put my patients in research or clinical trials. Excuse me? He said, hell with you. He went to California, got in that program. When his doctor had given him less than 5 years, 9 years later, he was telling this story. So remember that doctors, they have issues too. I don't put my patients in clinical trials. You know what? Take that with you, man. I'm the one dying from this shit. I decide what I do. You don't decide for me. He went out, got into study. 9 years later, he was still alive when his doctor gave him less than 5 years. So that was a doctor who had pretty much given up on you. You had 5 years rather than try to find something for you. So anyway, that is a little bit about that stuff. Some of those other conditions out there. And then what TPA is. All right. And know the medical term for stroke. CVA, cerebrovascular accident, is the medical term for stroke. All right. So that actually brings us to the end of the nervous system. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go here and close all this mess first. And then I'm going to go to here. Well, you know what? No, let's go here first. right, so that's your neurology, psychology review. This is what you're going to need to read, go through, and study to get ready for your test on neurology, which I'm going to activate right now. So there is, you know what, let me put it in the same email. Go down to neurology, right there. Assign it. I'm going to leave this one active until Friday. But you see it's going to end Friday at 12 noon. Pay attention to that. So you need to get it done before Friday. Okay. Continue. Share that with y'all. Neurology, psychology review, and test link. So open the review. Remember what I told y'all to do with these? Download it first, open it, but it doesn't say anybody can edit right here. So you can actually open it in email if you want. But download it, study it. When you're ready, click on that link, take your test. And we want that done by before noon on Friday, because I'm going to be activating another one this week for the heart and blood. We'll be starting the blood tomorrow. We'll do the heart on Thursday. So we'll have heart and blood this week, and then we'll do eyes and ears on Friday, but that won't be due until next week. So heart and blood is where we're going next. If you want to pre-look at that or start the homework on that or whatever you want to do, you can start studying for this right now as well. So I'll go on and send that. And that should be on the way. I'm seeing homework from some people, and we'll get that updated. Okay. All right, so there you go. So there is your review and quizzes for the nervous system and psychiatry. All right. So for the rest of today, go ahead and study for test.
Mr. Mahone, did you count me here today?
Who is that?
Nicole.
Yes, I did. You were
Okay.
late, but I got you. I got you.
Yes, it's because the first hour I was on the phone with the school. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Who are you talking to over there?
Yeah, Annabelle, because I was having trouble with my my student loans. I don't know what it was.
Your what?
My student loans. I don't know. I was having
okay,
trouble.
okay. All right, as long as you were talking to them, I'll give you credit for the first hour.
Thank you.
As long as you're doing something school related. Okay. So I got you on that. So study for your test, work on your homework. Remember, guys, you've got like an hour before the end of class when the lead class open. But this is, again, don't think of this as I get out of class early. Think of this as time to catch up on homework. Might want to knock that neurology homework out or go ahead and start studying for your test. I'll leave the test open or the class open. I'll be able to hear you. If you have any questions, just speak up and I'll be able to hear you come in here and answer your question for you. All right. So if there are no questions,